For centuries, few objects have generated as much fascination, debate, and mystery as the Turin Shroud. Stored in the historic city of Turin, the cloth has been studied by historians, archaeologists, theologians, chemists, physicists, and forensic experts from around the world. To some, it is one of the most important religious artifacts ever preserved. To others, it is an unsolved historical puzzle that continues to challenge scientific investigation. The linen cloth bears the faint image of a man who appears to have suffered extensive injuries. The image itself is unlike ordinary paintings or drawings. Despite decades of analysis, researchers have struggled to fully explain how it was formed. For generations, discussions surrounding the Turin Shroud focused on questions of age, authenticity, and image formation. But in recent years, another area of research began attracting significant attention: genetics. Scientists examining biological traces associated with the cloth believed modern technology might reveal information unavailable to previous generations of researchers. Tiny fragments of material, microscopic particles, and genetic residues offered the possibility of learning more about the object's history. What they found would surprise many people. The story begins long before genetic testing existed. The Turin Shroud first gained widespread attention centuries ago, but its claimed history stretches much further into the past. According to tradition, the cloth was associated with the burial of a man who had undergone crucifixion. Supporters of this tradition believed the image preserved on the linen represented an extraordinary historical event. Skeptics remained unconvinced. Throughout history, numerous religious relics have been misidentified, misunderstood, or incorrectly attributed. Historians therefore approached the Turin Shroud cautiously. Scientific investigation intensified during the 20th century. Researchers used photography, microscopy, chemistry, spectroscopy, and numerous other techniques to analyze the cloth. Each study generated new data. Each discovery raised new questions. Some findings appeared to support great age. Others suggested later origins. Debates continued for decades. One of the most significant moments occurred in 1988. Samples from the cloth underwent radiocarbon dating. The results suggested a medieval origin. Many researchers viewed the findings as strong evidence that the cloth was created centuries after the events traditionally associated with it. Yet, not everyone accepted the conclusion. Critics argued that contamination, repairs, or sampling issues may have influenced the results. Supporters and skeptics continued debating the evidence. The controversy never fully disappeared. As scientific methods improved, researchers began exploring new approaches. One area attracting increasing interest involved biological materials found on the cloth. Over hundreds of years, the Turin Shroud had been handled, displayed, transported, folded, unfolded, examined, and exposed to countless environmental conditions. As a result, it contained microscopic traces from numerous sources: dust, pollen, fibers, plant material, microorganisms, and potentially genetic material. Advances in molecular biology allowed scientists to examine these traces with unprecedented precision. Instead of focusing solely on the image itself, researchers began asking different questions. Who had come into contact with the cloth? Where had it traveled? What environmental evidence might be preserved within its fibers? To answer these questions, scientists collected and analyzed microscopic particles associated with the cloth. The process required extraordinary care. Ancient biological samples are notoriously difficult to study. Contamination poses constant challenges. Modern DNA can easily mix with older material. Researchers therefore developed strict procedures designed to minimize errors. The results proved fascinating. Genetic analysis identified traces associated with multiple geographic regions. Some samples appeared linked to populations from Europe. Others showed connections to areas of the Middle East. Additional evidence suggested interactions with regions extending beyond those locations. The findings immediately attracted attention. Why? Because the genetic diversity appeared consistent with a complex history involving movement across different parts of the world. Researchers emphasized an important point. The genetic material did not prove who originally owned the cloth, nor did it establish the identity of the individual represented by the image. Instead, it provided clues regarding the many people who may have interacted with the artifact over centuries. This distinction was critical. Scientific findings are often misunderstood when removed from context. The genetic evidence did not solve the mystery, but it offered valuable information. The cloth appeared to have accumulated biological traces from diverse populations over long periods of time. That observation aligned with historical records, indicating that the Turin Shroud had attracted pilgrims, religious figures, researchers, and visitors from numerous regions. Yet some details remained intriguing. Among the genetic signatures identified were traces associated with populations from areas historically connected to ancient trade routes. Researchers noted that such findings could reflect centuries of travel and human contact. The Mediterranean world has long served as a crossroads linking Europe, Asia, and the Middle East. Objects moving through these networks often accumulate evidence of extensive interaction. The Turin Shroud appeared no different. Meanwhile, another line of investigation focused on pollen. For decades, scientists had studied pollen grains recovered from the cloth. Pollen can act as a historical marker because different plants grow in different locations. By identifying pollen species, researchers sometimes reconstruct aspects of an object's environmental history. Some studies reported pollen consistent with regions beyond Europe. These findings generated considerable discussion. Supporters argued that the evidence suggested the cloth may have traveled through multiple geographic areas before reaching its current location. Critics cautioned that contamination and interpretation issues complicated conclusions. The debate continued. As genetic research expanded, scientists recognized both its potential and its limitations. DNA analysis can reveal remarkable information. Yet ancient samples present unique challenges. Material degrades over time. Environmental conditions influence preservation. Human handling introduces additional complexity. Every result requires careful interpretation. Researchers therefore avoided dramatic claims. Instead, they focused on what the evidence actually demonstrated. The Turin Shroud contained biological traces from multiple sources. Those traces reflected a long and complicated history, and modern genetic methods offered new opportunities for investigation. Public interest grew rapidly. Media reports frequently described the findings as astonishing. In some respects, that description was understandable. The idea that centuries-old biological evidence could still be detected fascinated many observers. Genetics had opened a window into aspects of the cloth's history that previous generations could not examine. Yet, scientists remained cautious. Extraordinary artifacts often attract extraordinary interpretations. Responsible research requires separating evidence from speculation. This principle guided ongoing investigations. At conferences and research meetings, experts discussed the implications of the findings. Some emphasized the value of interdisciplinary approaches. No single field could answer every question surrounding the Turin Shroud. History, chemistry, biology, archaeology, forensic science, and genetics all contributed pieces of the puzzle. Together, these disciplines created a more complete picture. Still, fundamental questions remained unresolved. How old was the cloth? How was the image formed? What historical journey had brought it to Turin? And what additional information might still be hidden within its fibers? These questions continued motivating researchers around the world. New technologies promised greater sensitivity. Improved sequencing methods allowed scientists to analyze ever smaller samples. Advanced imaging techniques revealed details previously invisible. Computational tools helped identify patterns within complex datasets. The investigation was evolving, and with each advance, the mystery grew more intriguing. Because while the genetic evidence provided valuable clues, it also highlighted something unexpected. The Turin Shroud was not simply a piece of linen. It was a biological archive, a historical record preserved at the microscopic level. Every interaction, every journey, every century of exposure may have left traces behind. The challenge was learning how to read them correctly. As researchers continued examining the evidence, some believed even more significant discoveries might still lie ahead. New analytical methods were being developed. Additional samples were being studied, and scientists hoped future investigations would provide deeper insight into the cloth's remarkable history. What they would uncover next would fuel another wave of debate, and potentially reveal even more surprising details about one of history's most famous and mysterious artifacts. We explored how advances in genetic analysis opened a new chapter in the investigation of the Turin Shroud. Researchers studying microscopic biological traces discovered evidence pointing to a long and complex history involving contact with people and environments from multiple regions of the world. Yet those discoveries represented only the beginning. As scientists continued examining the evidence, they realized the Turin Shroud contained far more information than anyone had initially imagined. The cloth had effectively become a historical archive. Not an archive written in ink, not an archive recorded in books, but an archive preserved through fibers, particles, microorganisms, and microscopic traces accumulated over centuries. Every object tells a story. The challenge lies in learning how to read it. For researchers studying ancient artifacts, one of the greatest obstacles is time. Time alters everything. Organic materials degrade, fibers weaken, chemical compounds change, environmental exposure leaves its mark. The Turin Shroud had experienced all of these influences. It had survived fires, transport across regions, repeated handling, public exhibitions, scientific examinations, and centuries of storage under varying conditions. Despite these challenges, modern technology allowed scientists to investigate details that previous generations could never have examined. One area of particular interest involved microbial DNA. Microorganisms exist virtually everywhere. They inhabit soil, air, plants, animals, buildings, and human skin. Wherever an object travels, microorganisms leave traces behind. Researchers realized that analyzing microbial signatures associated with the cloth might provide clues regarding its environmental history. The results proved fascinating. Scientists identified a wide variety of microbial material associated with the Turin Shroud. Some microorganisms appeared common throughout Europe. Others were associated with regions farther east. The findings suggested a complex history involving exposure to multiple environments over long periods. Researchers emphasized caution. Microbial evidence can be difficult to interpret. Many factors influence microbial distribution. Contamination remains a constant concern, yet the diversity observed on the cloth attracted considerable attention. It reinforced the idea that the artifact had experienced an extensive and complicated journey through history. Another significant area of research involved plant material. Microscopic botanical evidence had intrigued scientists for decades. Pollen grains, plant fibers, and other botanical traces sometimes provide valuable geographic information. Different plants grow in different regions. Their presence can offer clues about where an object may have traveled. Several studies reported evidence consistent with plants found in parts of the Mediterranean and Middle East. These findings generated renewed discussion regarding the possible historical movement of the cloth. Supporters of an ancient origin viewed the evidence as potentially significant. Skeptics urged restraint. Plant material can be transported in numerous ways. Trade, travel, handling, and environmental exposure can all introduce contamination. The debate remained unresolved, yet once again, the evidence pointed toward complexity. The Turin Shroud did not appear to be a simple artifact with a straightforward history. Instead, it seemed to reflect centuries of interaction with diverse environments and populations. As research progressed, scientists increasingly recognized the importance of interdisciplinary collaboration. No single field could fully explain the evidence. Geneticists contributed molecular analysis, historians provided context, archaeologists examined material culture, forensic specialists studied physical characteristics, chemists investigated composition. Together, they attempted to build a coherent picture. One question continued appearing throughout discussions. Could genetic evidence reveal information about the individual whose image appears on the cloth? The answer was more complicated than many people expected. Ancient DNA analysis is extraordinarily challenging. Even under ideal conditions, biological material degrades over time. Furthermore, the Turin Shroud had been touched by countless individuals across centuries. Separating ancient traces from later contamination is exceptionally difficult. Researchers therefore approached such questions cautiously. While biological evidence existed, identifying specific individuals was far beyond current capabilities. The available data simply did not support definitive conclusions regarding personal identity. This distinction proved important. Popular media sometimes portrayed scientific findings in dramatic ways. Headlines frequently suggested breakthroughs or final answers. Researchers themselves tended to be more conservative. Science advances through evidence, not certainty. Each new discovery contributes information. Rarely does a single finding solve a centuries-old mystery. The Turin Shroud exemplified this reality perfectly. Every investigation generated new insights, yet fundamental questions remained unanswered. How exactly was the image formed? Why does it possess characteristics unlike ordinary artwork? What sequence of historical events brought the cloth to its current location? And perhaps most importantly, how should the growing body of scientific evidence be interpreted? The image itself continued attracting enormous interest. For decades, scientists had struggled to explain its formation. The image appears superficial, affecting only the uppermost fibers. It contains unusual properties that distinguish it from traditional paintings. Researchers proposed numerous theories: chemical reactions, thermal effects, natural processes, artistic techniques, environmental influences. No single explanation achieved universal acceptance. This ongoing uncertainty contributed significantly to the artifact's enduring mystery. As new analytical methods emerged, investigators revisited old questions. High-resolution imaging revealed previously unnoticed details. Digital analysis enhanced understanding of fiber structures. Advanced spectroscopy provided additional information regarding chemical composition. Each technique added another piece to the puzzle, yet the complete picture remained elusive. Some researchers compared the Turin Shroud to a historical detective case. Investigators possessed numerous clues. Some clues appear consistent, others seem contradictory. Evidence accumulates, theories evolve, but a definitive solution remains out of reach. This complexity explains why interest in the artifact has endured for so long. Simple mysteries are eventually solved. Complex mysteries continue attracting attention. The Turin Shroud belongs firmly in the second category. Meanwhile, genetic research continued advancing rapidly. Sequencing technologies improved. Analytical techniques became more sophisticated. Scientists gained the ability to examine increasingly small samples with greater precision. These developments raised new possibilities. Future studies might reveal information currently beyond reach. Researchers remained optimistic, but realistic. Ancient artifacts present unique challenges. Preservation conditions vary. Contamination complicates interpretation. And scientific limitations must always be acknowledged. Nevertheless, the potential remained exciting. every technological advance offered new opportunities for investigation. Beyond the scientific discussions, the Turin Shroud continued holding deep cultural and historical significance. For many people, its importance extends beyond questions of authenticity. The artifact serves as a symbol connecting history, faith, tradition, and curiosity. Regardless of one's interpretation, its influence on human culture is undeniable. Millions of people have viewed images of the cloth. Countless books have been written about it. Researchers from numerous disciplines have devoted years to its study. Few artifacts inspire comparable levels of attention. The genetic findings contributed another chapter to this ongoing story, not because they solved the mystery, but because they demonstrated the remarkable capabilities of modern science. Tiny biological traces invisible to the naked eye now provide valuable historical information. Fragments of DNA can reveal patterns of human interaction. Microscopic evidence can illuminate centuries of movement and exposure. What once seemed impossible has become routine scientific practice. This transformation reflects broader advances in archaeology and historical research. Scientists today can investigate ancient objects in ways unimaginable only decades ago. As technology continues evolving, even more powerful tools will become available. The Turin Shroud will likely remain a subject of investigation for years to come. Future researchers may develop methods capable of extracting additional information. New discoveries may clarify existing questions, or they may introduce entirely new mysteries. History repeatedly demonstrates that scientific progress often generates as many questions as answers. The Turin Shroud appears destined to follow that pattern. Perhaps the most remarkable aspect of the genetic evidence is not what it proved. It is what it revealed about the complexity of history itself. The cloth carries traces of countless interactions. People from different regions, different cultures, different centuries, all contributed, knowingly or unknowingly, to the biological record preserved within its fibers. In that sense, the Turin Shroud represents more than a single artifact. It represents a meeting point between science and history, between the past and the present, between mystery and investigation. Researchers discovered genetic evidence. The findings were indeed astonishing, not because they provided final answers, but because they demonstrated how much information can survive across centuries and how much remains waiting to be understood. The mystery of the Turin Shroud continues, and for scientists, historians, and curious observers alike, that may be the most fascinating discovery of all.